Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me, as they will on all of our shows, are Luke Drobner and Michael O'Connor. For those of you joining us in our first episode in our maiden voyage into the basketball world, here's a little background about us and our show. We are, as you probably guessed from our names, two brothers and a cousin clinically obsessed with basketball. Our goal in starting the podcast is to catch up, laugh, and talk about a topic that we all love. In this and all future episodes, we plan to dive deep into the pressing questions circulating in the NBA and have some fun along the way. We're not experts, but we love the game, and we want to use this podcast as a forum to discuss it deeper with all of you. And on that note, some introductions might be in order. Luke, I'll probably kick this off to you to start. How about you let us know about your experiences playing and watching hoops? And for fun to kick things off, how about an incredibly hot take about the league as it stands?
Hey, what's up? I'm Luke. I play basketball about 3 to 4 times a week. Usually just pick up. Sometimes I play in an adult league, but usually I'm just out there having fun. My NBA experience, I watch a lot. I try and watch every game I possibly can. Favorite team to watch is going to be the Denver Nuggets, just because I love Nikola Jokic and I love the way they run their offense. My favorite player, Luka Doncic, because we share the same name and I try and play like him. My radically hot take is one that we recently talked about, not on the podcast, and it's the fact that Draymond Green makes a larger non-statistical impact on his team's success than Charles Barkley ever did.
Oh my God!
I don't know if I can.
No.
In our notes it says a hot topic that we can only talk about shortly. That I don't know if that's possible.
We can just leave it there then, because I'm right.
I don't even think we can finish the podcast. Good Lord!
All right.
After last week's Last Dance, you're gonna say that MVP
yeah, I am.
Barkley. All right.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Yeah. I'm Mike. I'm Matt's brother. Luke plays 4 times a week. I traditionally live in the past. I played basketball. I used to lie to people. I used to say I played through my varsity level in high school, but I rage quit after sophomore year. The writing was on the wall that apparently they didn't really value the rebounds and defense as much anymore, so I quit.
Didn't get the love.
No. I was a grinder, though. I felt.
White boy hustle.
Defense and rebounds was my thing. Can't really shoot. Definitely can't shoot anymore. NBA experience. Oh, I love the NBA. Obviously, favorite team is the Knicks, but that's a love-hate thing. Watch as much as I can. I'm a LeBron stan, so favorite player has to be LeBron. I'm back in the Lakers right now. My radically hot take would just be, now that during COVID there's so many old games on, that Celtics super team in 2007, 2008, should they have probably won more? They probably should have been better. That's all I got.
Not to feed into it, I know we're keeping it brief. Were they that good?
I didn't think they were that good.
I feel like the league as a whole was just kind of in a lull. I don't think it necessarily Kevin Garnett, great, fine. Paul Pierce
is good, but not great. That's my opinion.
I've been bothered by the games I've watched. I'm like, I don't think this team's that cool. Rondo was sweet. Rondo had his
Ray Allen's great.
Yeah.
No?
Right.
They had KG.
I guess they were good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the supporting pieces were good. They had some pretty good role players in there.
Yeah.
I think it was just kind of a product of being deep, and also just who were they competing against? Even those Lakers teams they went up against were not anything special.
A young LeBron.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the East itself. It's not like there were too many great teams there.
It's sad to watch them in 2011 though. Oh my God! There was a game. It was Miami Heat against them, and it was just kind of sad. I was just like, oh.
Right before they fleeced the Nets.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, you can introduce yourself as well.
Yep. All right. So I am Matt O'Connor. I did not have the same playing experience as everyone else. I was really a rec league hero growing up. I really would just kind of take those minutes. I made the best of them. I think I deserved more time with my travel teams, but whatever. I played in, rec leagues throughout high school and college. I did some intramurals, and now I'll just play pickup whenever I can. But I love the NBA. I've watched my entire life. I'd say I watch a game at least every day. And honestly, I'm watching highlights beyond that. My favorite team is also the New York Knicks. I will concede and admit that I was a New Jersey Nets fan. I'm from New Jersey, and then they abandoned us. So back in the mid to late 2000s, I gave up on my Nets like they gave up on me. And now I'm rooting for the Knicks, which is unfortunate given how the Nets has played out as a franchise. My favorite player now, God, it just can't be a Nick, but it's probably Mitchell Robinson. But in this segment, my hot take is that Phil Jackson is a wildly overrated coach. I truly do not think he gets way more credit than he deserves. Yes, did he coach three-peats? Yes. But what did he really do? He had some of the best players of all time, some of the best teams of all time. And I don't really think you can attribute too much of that to him. Sure, he implemented systems, fine, the triangle, whatever. I just don't think he was that good.
Luke,
really don't.
Matthew's been harping on that all week.
I mean,
I don't.
Watching that Jordan doc, you kind of see he just kind of like ripped off an offense and then had Michael and Pippen to run it for him. So I kind of agree with Matt here. I think he's obviously a good coach, but great might be pushing it maybe.
Devil's advocate is how he basically tamed Rodman. And also the Shaq and Kobe, even though it wound up being too volatile of a relationship, he
still kept that together.
Yeah, like I think there's something to be said. I don't think you just wander in, even with those good of teams. Like
Kurt was a player's coach.
Kurt didn't three-peat, and whatever you can say like LeBron or whatever, but Kurt didn't three-peat.
Yeah.
No.
So
also, I mean, I don't know. I think that the Warriors would have won. If Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson don't get hurt, you can't really necessarily look at it that way either. Injuries are.
I don't know. Kawhi was on a mission.
Mitchell Robinson's your favorite player?
Oh, they wouldn't have won. Mitchell Robinson, right? I mean, right now, him, Frank Ntilikina, probably.
Not RJ.
I don't know. The Knicks are garbage.
RJ Barrett.
RJ is not as charismatic as I would like. I don't know. I need someone with a little more pizzazz. And Frank, he's always popping off some nice fits walking into the stadium every night. Right. Mitch is hysterical.
Good to know Matthew likes pizzazz in his teams.
I just like Knicks, something a little more entertaining. And you know what? The other thing, like they bring the energy on the court. They're always they're working their asses off every time.
Yeah, Frank does.
And you don't get that from all your players. Yeah, exactly. I like that. They may not be the best players in the NBA. Like obviously, I wish LeBron was a Knick. He'd probably be my favorite player then. I don't know. Growing up as a Nets fan, I love Jason Kidd. He came in, worked hard, smallest guy getting all these triple doubles.
True.
But
That's what it
is. All right. I digress. We got a little too into that. But I want to kick off some of our first storylines of our podcast. I think the first thing we wanted to look at, obviously the NBA has paused their season since the beginning of March because of COVID-19. Really, our mission is on this specific podcast to take a look at some of the biggest storylines and recap what was going on in the NBA right before the shutdown. So with that, I think the easiest place to start is the Los Angeles Lakers. And Michael, seeing as you pointed out LeBron, I'll let you start on this. The writing on the wall was that they were playing at probably the peak of their game. They were going on an absolute tear, specifically LeBron, and that's why he kind of made up some ground in the MVP race. Do you think it was their year?
I'm pretty convinced, and I've been trying to be so objective about this all year as I've been so desperately rooting for this because I'm a shameless I want LeBron to be in the conversation, and I want the conversation to be a little bit easier. I don't think there'll ever be a GOAT decision. It's going to be subjective, but you'd like to see him get a little bit closer. They were dominant. I mean, what was their record? They
look that up.
How many losses? Anybody run the numbies on that?
They are 49-14.
Yeah, that's great. Is
that his best? Is that his best? Bucks are 53-12. I don't know. They only played so many games, but
right. I mean, I really thought so. I mean, look at his assists too. He's mastering playing in most of the games while having a different type of impact on the game.
Well, his assists are up. He's playing point guard.
Right.
So
right. I mean, but that means something.
Right.
He doesn't need to just bulldoze people and get tired for the playoffs.
It's also not the first time he's played out of position. If you really think of him as a small forward or a shooting guard, it's not the first time he's ever played outside of those roles, right? He's played center on some of his teams. He's played power forward. We know he played power forward on some of those great Miami Heat teams.
Right. But it just seems like –
And I think I was going to say, I think the other thing worth noting is that he's playing with the best player he's ever played with his entire career.
AD.
And I mean, I know people, in Anthony Davis. People are obviously, you can make the case for Dwayne Wade. I personally think
Dwayne Wade was at the end of his career. This is prime AD.
This is not. He was.
I think not only best player, but best fit all-star. Like, it's the best fit next to LeBron James. It's not someone who's taking necessarily his moments or like his ball where he'll have the ball. He's not stealing those moments. They just work very symbiotically.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing to look at there too is they're not running a tremendous amount of pick and roll in this offense with the two of them. which is something that I think a lot of people anticipated coming into the season, which is, potentially something that they're holding out for the playoffs. It's truly a theory I have, but I also don't necessarily think they need to. If you look at the other role players on this team, you can let the two of them kind of absorb some of the defense and then kick out some shooters. Not that KCP or Danny Green are, Danny Green, fine, is a great
Danny Green
shooter.
is a great shooter.
Yeah, exactly. But beyond that, they don't have a tremendous amount.
But that actually is a good to another point I have. I'm sorry, Luke, go.
I'm actually I was very skeptical on this team, especially at the beginning of the year. I didn't think Dwight Howard was going to play as well as he did. I think they have a lot of guys off their bench that just stepped up. Avery Bradley, he was in Memphis last year. I had no idea what he was doing. Then all of a sudden he's on this Lakers team putting up numbers. He was playing really well. Right? And Caruso, I'm like, all right, it's funny that bald white guy is playing with LeBron, but like Caruso's been playing really well as well, So I was very skeptical, but it really, like, as the season matured, it really seemed like they were up there with some of these other teams. They were definitely number 1 or 2 in the West the whole year, and it really comes down to whether or not they're going to prevail through the playoffs.
One thing I will say, I am a little disappointed they weren't more aggressive at the trade deadline. Not that they had too much to necessarily give up, because obviously they traded so much away to get Anthony Davis, but they needed just a point guard who could shoot.
They needed Reggie Jackson or Derrick Rose. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and even Derrick Rose would have been an interesting fit. Reggie Jackson, would have been a little bit better, although honestly, even since he's joined the Clippers, he hasn't really gelled. So maybe it is a blessing in disguise they didn't end up with him.
Clippers have a lot of talent.
I got to tell you, I just have a note here, and you guys have all touched on it, just with all these different role players, like Dwight working out. Mm-hmm. The chemistry here, it's like all of these different players that are on that team, they put away
they all want to win.
They put away the ego, and they were like, we need to put all the BS aside, and they did that, and it's working, which makes it seem like, why not just add Keefe? Let's just add Markieff, and that's enough for the trade depth. I think that was fine.
It does counter the Marcus Morris trade for the other.
They cancel out. It doesn't matter. So
also,
and I think that's actually a good point, because looking at the Lakers, you kind of have to look at who they're competing against. And when we think of the Western Conference, the Clippers are going to be the top of that. And I think this is kind of the biggest point and the biggest edge the Lakers do have at a minimum in the Western Conference, is that you can't really guard LeBron and Anthony Davis with certain personnel. Like, if you're the Clippers, who are pretty universally accepted to be the greatest threat, who is guarding LeBron, and then who's guarding Anthony Davis?
And then they have a center on the floor as well, because AD is playing power forward, not center.
Exactly. And so that's why, like, you can, if you're the Clippers, you can put Kawhi or Paul George on LeBron, fine, but the other one isn't guarding Anthony Davis. They can't handle him. And then realistically, if you're putting Harrell, Zubac, someone like that on him, then who's guarding the center? I just think they're a matchup nightmare for that team. And I truly cannot see a scenario where this Lakers team does not win the championship. I can't.
All right, so if you think they're winning the championship, and now that the season's been canceled, do you think they have another year? The season's not looking good. How much time do they have?
I think,
right. So here in all my notes, I'm listing off their age on their roster. So LeBron's 34, Danny Green's 32, JaVale's 31, Rondo's 33, Howard is 33, Markieff Morris, who they picked up at the deadline, is 30. So maybe we don't include him, but I mean, we've seen a decline in Rondo's stats. He's had about a 14 PER since leaving Boston. This year it was 12.4. So obviously he's down a little bit. And who really expected guys like Dwight Howard and JaVale to really step up and play really well this year? So how much time do you think they have, especially with other contenders in the West?
I mean, that's the thing I look at with the Lakers is, they're aging, but they can kind of pull off some of the moves that, the Cleveland Cavaliers did with LeBron or the Miami Heat, and that you can kind of cycle through some of these peripheral players. And as long as the core of LeBron and Anthony Davis are performing well, and realistically, you can loop Danny Green in there, you can loop Kyle Kuzma in there, as much as I don't love Kuzma. Mm-hmm. And you kind of keep that group tight and together, they could push it out for another 3 years or so after this year.
Definitively a year. Like, I don't think this team will look the way it looks right now next year or 2 years. But as Matthew was saying, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know the money here and I don't know the contract, so I'm not meaning to be accurate, but just plop Jeff Teague in for Rondo. I'm just saying, it doesn't matter who the other chess pieces are, as long as LeBron is going to be that good. I mean, look at the trash he has brought to the final.
I mean, a 34-year-old LeBron, I haven't gone through his stats, and I don't think he's really seen a big drop-off in anything significantly from what I can just tell off the top of my mind. But
I mean, he was averaging 26, 8, and between 10 and 11 per game this season.
He's still 34, and next year might be the year where we see a older LeBron.
Right.
We don't
know.
And I feel comfortable saying that they're at least going to be a top 4 team in the West next year. After that, I'm not so sure.
I think they'll be the top of the West, but that's just me.
Next year.
But I also think realistically, I think it depends too on how they slowly pass the torch from LeBron to Anthony Davis in LA. Because realistically, that's the succession plan, is to let AD take the reins, and he's kind of starting to inch his way closer to hitting his prime years, which is why, as LeBron ages, as long as he's still, even if he's not hitting the same numbers he's hitting now, like he's not going to be at the MVP level, even if he's hitting like 22, 6 and 6, which is low by his standards, like that's still great next to an Anthony Davis who's playing at an MVP level. So I realistically, I do think that it's something that can be sustained if you put the right pieces around them and kind of slowly inch that way closer. And LeBron accepts the change in his role a little bit more,
where he becomes the number 2 guy.
Was kind of right. And I think that was probably the intention of bringing in Anthony Davis as well. They didn't trade for him to let him walk this summer,
which is also another. Yeah.
But I doubt.
I doubt.
But I still doubt.
Either way with this, I don't know if everyone would agree here, but Lakers, pleasant surprise this year. Pleasant surprise that they were likable. I like this team, which is crazy. And personal opinion, and I don't know if this helps transition to other teams in our Western storylines, but personal opinion, I think they would win the Battle LA against the Clippers. And we've kind of talked about them a little bit, but if anybody has any Clippers thoughts.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can circle back to these contenders. Let's start with the Clippers.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Matt, you have a lot of thoughts about it.
Definitely. I think they're legit. I think everyone thinks they're legit. My biggest issue with them is that they just haven't really played together at all this season. I mean, you look at, Kawhi and Paul George, load management. Oh my Lord. They really are. They're basically skipping every other game, and it's just crazy. Like, they're going to have no continuity come playoff time. You look at the gap in the season, should we end up having some playoffs somewhere down the line, I just feel like there's going to be nothing really there for them to really latch onto. Nothing to, their default setting where they can just go in, beat some teams. The West is really tough, and it's not even just the Lakers.
But, their depth is incredible. The number of lineups they can throw at a team through the 48 minutes of a game is just insane. It's nonstop. If you're an opposing team, you got to play 48 minutes against this team because whoever's coming off the bench is still going to give you work. Yeah, they take Kawhi out, but then you got to deal with Pat Bev and Paul George, so I think.
And that's the thing, too, though, that I look at is most teams shorten their rotation when the playoffs come, which does benefit them. They are super deep. They don't necessarily need to. I do think, though, realistically, some of their role players, and I'll kind of put that in quotes, are not necessarily suited to run big minutes in the playoffs.
Then they don't have to run big
Beverly
minutes. Beverly can, Lou Will can, but maybe you pull Marcus Morris if he has to. If he plays 10 minutes in a game, that's fine. Kawhi can play 40.
And
PG can play 40.
Ever since that trade, mind you, since he joined the team, he's only averaging 9.5 points, 4 rebounds, and
that's what I mean.
If
you're going to have to shorten the rotation, why not? And if you really, really need to put him in, you put him in.
Here's the kicker. He was shooting top 3 in the NBA from 3 before the trade. Now he's only shooting 28.3%. And he's doing it on 5 attempts a game since joining the Clippers. So it's not even necessarily like it's that small of a sample size. They brought him in to kind of be this, I don't want to say middle-sized forward to guard LeBron, Anthony Davis, just bring in a big body who could add a little outside shooting, but he hasn't done it. And I just don't think that this team, Reggie Jackson, Magruder, Patterson, are they going to touch the court? No.
I just think that a lot of their problems are fixed with time. I think this break is giving them a lot of time to, one, practice together. Like you said, Paul George and Kawhi aren't practicing together. And the other thing is just building continuity. So all these role players, when it does come time to shorten the rotation, who's Doc Rivers looking to? And this time just gives them the time to watch these guys practice and participate in drills. And so, I think they're only going up from here. They have an insane amount of depth. Everybody's on contract. The owner, I can't remember his name, crazy guy. He's going to spend.
Steve Ballmer.
Steve Ballmer. He's going to spend. He put down $2 billion for the new stadium, right? Like, he's made it a goal to spend. So
right. Yeah, and I mean, it is. It's an intriguing situation. Don't get me wrong. They are absolutely, in my eyes, the number 2 team in the West. But I have some total reservations about this team. I could see them having issues in the playoffs against, some well-oiled machines.
All right.
I could see a team like the Jazz, the Nuggets, the Rockets, all kind of throwing some different lineups at him that could throw them off. And without any continuity, I could see it being a problem.
Mike, do you have any thoughts about another team that might be able to knock off the Lakers or the Clippers?
I mean, I don't know how much you want me to, if you'll entertain this one, but I gotta say the Rockets. I'm feeling the Rockets.
So I like that. Is there, for me personally, I like what they did. And I think we can get into that a little bit later, but small ball is interesting. It is very interesting with the Rockets.
I completely disagree with small ball. Here are my notes. I'm a huge hater. I do not like small ball. Let's look at recent championships and notable players at least 6'10" or over on the roster. We had the Raptors that had Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, Warriors Kevin Durant, Andrew Bogut, Spurs had Tim Duncan, Heat Chris Bosh, Mavericks had Dirk, Lakers had Pau Gasol. All these teams have all-star big men or impact one-way players. Andrew Bogut wasn't going to put in 20 points a game for you, but he was going to protect you the rim on defense.
Right.
Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, same thing, right? And the Warriors still had Kevin Durant. So then when they went to that death lineup, they still had a guy who's 6'10", 6'11" on the floor playing center. Plus, by the way, he's one of the most skilled scorers in the whole game ever. So I just think you can't win playoff basketball without an impact big on the floor. And I think that's just, it's like clear, right? Like, sure, Westbrook can run down that court as fast as you want, but look at what happened to Giannis last year, and Westbrook's 6 inches, 7 inches shorter than Giannis, and you're telling me Westbrook's going to do it better? And we know James Harden's not pulling this team to the championship. We've seen it in recent years. We know he's not. He's not going to do it.
Well, he just gets gassed, and I mean that makes sense. I think it is part of the D'Antoni system that you run and gun, and that you truly live and die by it. But I will say one thing about this team, and you do bring up a good point. You need to be able to rebound. You have guys who get out there and grab boards. You do. You have. I mean, obviously Russell Westbrook. I know. Yeah, he's not as good as Giannis. He's not going to do the same things that Giannis does. But he is still uniquely built to go in and get some rebounds as a point guard.
Yeah.
He's not big, but he's explosive. He gets them. He's always well positioned. And he does it on the offensive glass too, which is super important. I think kind of in that same vein, if push came to shove, you could throw Tyson Chandler out there, who they still have on their roster. And look, he's totally washed. I recognize that. But if you needed a center in there, you could throw one out there.
I just think someone like an Embiid or a Giannis is going to eat this team up.
That's a good point, Luke, that I do think these bigger guys could really chew this up. And case in point is the Clippers played the Rockets, and the Rockets were on that 12-2 run since going small. Everyone was kind of believing in it. Bill Simmons was starting to believe in it, which was crazy. And the Clippers eviscerated the Rocket. It was, and Zubac looked like Karl Malone, and I was just like, what is
I remember that.
It was almost hard to watch. I was like, oh my God.
And it was Zubac, not Embiid, not Giannis, not AD.
Rocco's, Robert Covington. Okay, if we're going for all-time fun nicknames, Rocco's for some reason, that's just rolling off the tongue for me. But
it is a great nickname.
Rocco's just couldn't do anything. It was really hard to watch. And they were making threes. Actually, I'm going to correct myself. They were missing the threes, which is exactly what, everyone was getting upset with that the next day, all of the pundits who talk about it. But D'Antoni even said, yeah, that's how we play. We're not going to win if we don't hit threes. But
and you see similar problems with other teams like the Jazz.
Yeah. Well, this is a good transition.
Right.
Where
so,
I think
that's where it's a good transition into looking at the Jazz.
You have a team that, whether or not the strategy is good, you actually have an identity that they are sticking to and they believe in. Can't say the same for the Utah Jazz, I don't think.
I'm so upset by this. This preseason Jazz team had me so amped.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, this is the best built team I've seen. First off, I'm huge on Donovan Mitchell. I love the fact that he's a bucket getter, and he does it in a lot of different ways. And he's athletic, and he puts in a lot of effort on defense, which is great. Right? And then you got guys like Conley, Ingles, and Bogdanovich who are going to shoot. Conley not so much this year. And then I'm iffy on Gobert. He really struggles on offense, and I think that's a big issue for me. But he is their defensive anchor, which means a lot.
So I think in looking at the Jazz, they truly are pretty well constructed to compete in the current NBA.
Mm-hmm.
They have a great mix of shooting, and then it's actually a good place to jump from the Rockets, a true center in Gobert.
Right.
And when you look at that, they're shooting the lights out. The problem is, since Conley's come in, he just has not gelled. And I was expecting him to be a great second punch to Donovan Mitchell, and he just hasn't.
Right.
And they've flirted with different rotations because obviously Conley got hurt earlier in the year, and they were able to move things around. But they were better without him in the starting lineup. And I think that they're going to need to be flexible with the lineups they throw out there because they're shooting the lights out. You have Bogdanovich going 41.4%, Ingles 39.7%. You have then Royce O'Neal, Mike Conley, and Donovan Mitchell are all above 36%.
I'm so big on Royce O'Neal. He's a great defender as well.
Yeah.
I think he's such an underrated defender. I have his defensive win shares here, 2.2 defensive win shares on the season, which is ahead of guys like Pat Bev at 2.0, Paul George 2.0, Jonathan Isaac 1.9, Marcus Gasol 1.8. He has a defensive box plus minus of 2.1, and he's also shooting 38.9% from three on 3.5 shots per game. Some of those guys I just listed on their defensive win share numbers are considered elite defenders. Paul George, Pat Bev, Jonathan Isaac. Jonathan Isaac plays on the Magic, literally played defense.
Exactly. And that's why I think you look at some of these players and some of the rotations they could throw out there. As long as you have one of the primary ball handlers in Mitchell or Conley out there, maybe not necessarily out there at the same time for most of it, they're going to be okay because you're going to have someone finding these guys for shots, and then you're going to have a Gobert or whoever it might be down there to get these rebounds. And so I do think they're well constructed, and they have been surging. I mean, they're, correct me if I'm wrong, they're fourth in the West right now.
Third or fourth, yeah.
Yeah, and so you look at that, and yes, they are fourth. They just checked. But you look at that, and they really are, even in that spot, only 2 games out of third from Denver and 3 games out of second from the Clippers. They're not far off from truly being
a contender,
one of the greatest threats. Right. And I think everyone would have said they were a contender going into the year. They just didn't quite get over the hump. Another one kind of like that, that I think is well constructed and might not necessarily have that extra little ounce of firepower to get into the finals are the Nuggets. And I think they're similarly constructed. And I guess it's more the way that I love watching basketball is that you have great passing. In this case, it would be Nikola Jokic and great shooters around him. And they do. They're shooting the lights out. And I think the Jazz and the Nuggets are 2 teams that maybe they're not in that true top tier, but they're right there. They're knocking on the door.
Do you want to give a rebuttal to that, Mike?
It's so funny you said that, Luke. Well, Luke, I know that this is another one of your teams. Like, I feel like the Jazz and the Nuggets are.
I know these are my boys right here. I love this team.
I know you do, and that's why I have no interest in raining on anyone's parade because I like them too. I really like the uniform. Like, I'm more of an eye test, as the podcast should probably know. I'm probably the more eye test guy over everything else, and I like the jerseys. I've been to the Pepsi Center, and I had a blast. The mascot's awesome. I'm a Nuggets.
Denver's a good time.
Rockies, one of the best in the biz.
Here's my one eye test thing, and this is my one point. I have notes on the Nuggets. I am not sure where I am on Jamal Murray. I looked it up. His stats are better year over year. Like he's so inconsistent. I have my note says my eye test throws me off for him. And I'm not sure what to think. I think they're like the Nuggets can upgrade, and it's obviously Bradley Beal, but that's a whole different discussion. I don't know.
The Bradley Beal on that team would be insane. I think they trade away one of their wings, not Jamal Murray. I think if they could get rid of like Harris or Barton for Bradley Beal, that team would be golden.
Yeah, I agree. And I think kind of the other key in that too is you pull him in, and obviously you have Jokic, but then really just the one thing that needs to pop, and I think it is, we've seen signs of it this season, is Michael Porter Jr. Because he looked awesome this year.
Their forward depth is low-key amazing. With Porter, and they have Millsap. Millsap's gone. Millsap's old, but they have Jeremy Grant, who can play both forward spots, and he can also play a little center. I think they have really great depth. Their wing spots they play 3 wings, a center, and a forward. Like, Murray's not really a guard, in my opinion. He's a big guard, but he's not really a point guard. But
that's the thing. It works, though, because if you look at Grant and Millsap, who play consistent minutes on this team, it's not like they're being ball dominant. They're catching and shooting, but they're both shooting above 40%.
They're playing defense and they're rebounding.
They don't have to do anything more than that, and they're realizing their role, which is what's perfect about this Nuggets team is everyone knows exactly what they need to do, and they're doing it well. The problem is they just don't have whatever that, that X factor is to get over the
Mhm.
hump. And maybe it's just the fact that there's a LeBron, there's a
Maybe.
Kawhi Leonard and Paul George out there. But they're right there, and they have some time. Jokic is so young. He's only 24.
And the Nuggets is most apparent to me, key man risk, even more than LeBron. Jokic, I don't know what he wound up doing over the summer, what kind of food he found or what he was into, but he came back and just was out of shape and not good, like really off of what he was last year. And the Nuggets were not impressive at the beginning of the season, and all of a sudden a flip switch.
They came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So
and that's what this team's identity is.
Yeah. So if Jokic needs to bring it every night.
Like you said, like the eye test, I watch this team a lot. There's a Nuggets game on tonight. It's probably the game I'm going to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I'll find it on Reddit or something like that, right? And the beginning of every Nuggets game is so heartbreaking because I'm so amped to watch someone do something exciting, but it never happens within the first half. Ever.
Yeah.
They're always down by like 10 going into half, and then they come back and win by 5. And that's the identity of this team. They're so inconsistent, and then all of a sudden, like, Jamal Murray just like turns it on for no reason, starts hitting like every other three. Jokic starts grabbing 5 offensive rebounds possession. It's insane. But like you said, like, is Jokic going to be able to bring it 48 minutes, 82 games a year, and then into the playoffs?
But that's the thing, personally, I look at this team and you have everyone is under 30 except for Paul Millsap. And honestly, like, yeah, he's playing well, but it's not like he's an integral part. They're going to be able to sustain this a long time. And you got to figure Jokic is he's only 24. He's going to figure it out. And he's going to finally be able to get into that regimen that, keeps him in shape from the get-go. And
this is my problem.
40 games into
my
the
biggest
year.
problem with this team is I feel like every year we're like, next year is their year. Next year they're going to be great, not good. And we say that every year. It's been like 3 years in a row where we're like, wow, Jokic is really good. He's going to come back next year and be great. And we say the same thing about Jamal Murray, and we say the same thing about this team. I remember when people were really big on Gary Harris. People were like, wow, this guy's really good. He's going to be really good for this Nuggets team. And now he's been like average, right? So like,
yeah,
it's just like,
I think it's another.
But I think that's kind of where I get back to Michael Porter Jr. is that they're missing this really versatile wing. Obviously, they play a bunch of them, and they don't have the one who's, I go for more that athletic build where you have like a Giannis, LeBron, a Kawhi, a Paul George,
Mhm.
where they can play up and down positions. They're quick. They can get in the rim. They're physical, but they can also shoot and play like great perimeter defense. They kind of don't.
They need
that.
They need one more bona fide all-star. They need another all-star with Jokic, I think.
But that's the thing. They could already have it. I truly think if he stays healthy, and that is a huge if with Porter Jr., he'd be great.
This team has like unlimited potential. This team,
exactly.
Like, there's no ceiling for this team. If everybody developed the same year and had a breakout season the same year, this team would easily be the title contender. But no one, like, who's going to break out? When are they going to break out? And how often are they breaking out? And that's kind of like the story about this team.
And
totally.
And I will say, I was harsh about Jokic's summer. I know he had fun, probably. It looks like it based on how he played in the first half of the season. I
call him Big Sexy. That's my man right there.
Matthew calls him like the milkman. I don't even want to go
Oh, my Mayo man. Have you seen him in those yellow? He looks like some Hellman's mayonnaise when he has those yellow jerseys on.
That's insane.
I love my Mayo man.
I'm going to disclaim this just because this is now on a podcast and can be found forever. That I could be wrong on my Jamal Murray take. Like, Jamal Murray could wind up being insane. Also, there's upside there, but I'm not. My eye test is just kind of strange right now.
He just.
What do you guys?
Sometimes he turns up and sometimes he doesn't.
What do you guys think? Should we head over to the East, or is there a moment of silence for the Blazers? Do we talk about them?
Blazers are
Hey, I love Melo more than anyone in this world, but that ship might have sailed for them. But who knows? The race for 8 is interesting. I wasn't planning on talking about that today.
What do you think?
I mean, Dame is a shot maker,
and he's
Dame is a lethal scorer. Problem is,
I'm going top 10.
Dame is old.
I'm going top 10 player in the NBA. Also,
I'd agree.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair.
I think that's an appropriate homage to the Blazers at this point.
Dame is 30.
So that could be,
and CJ's 28. So they're getting there. They're getting to the end. And Nurkic just had that gruesome injury, and we don't know what he's going to look like when he gets back. So
right. Yeah, I mean, this we could get into. We could do a whole podcast on this alone.
Yeah.
The blowing up the Blazers, which is my personal belief. But all right, I think that is a good look at the Western Conference. It's probably a good idea to kind of switch over and look at some of the contenders in the East.
Wait, before we do that, can we just take like a 5-second break?
Now that we're back from the break, I think we should probably start taking a look at some of the top of the East. Realistically, in my eyes, it is a one-horse race here. The Milwaukee Bucks have been on an absolute tear with Giannis at the helm. I could go and talk about them for so long. I love the Bucks. I love what they're doing. They follow and truly have perfected the mold that both the Nuggets and the Jazz have done in having a great passer, floor general in Giannis, which they're lucky to have. Fantastic shooters around him at every position. I feel like, Luke, you're a huge Bucks fan. I know you have that Giannis jersey.
I do have that Giannis jersey.
Why don't you take a start?
All right, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you take a look at them?
I wrote down like successes and failures and futures for all these teams. I mean, like obviously there's successes. You have the MVP. Giannis is the MVP. He's going to continue to be an MVP level player for who knows how long. Guy is insane. You have a lot of shooting around him, which is great because Giannis needs his spacing. And you have a great coach in Mike Budenholzer, who's created a system that everybody seems to enjoy and play well in. Like, I'm happy to see this team succeed. Mike Budenholzer deserves a ring. I know LeBron pretty much ruled the East from 2007 to 2018, where Mike Budenholzer got destroyed when he was coaching those Atlanta Hawks, right? And everything went through LeBron.
I mean, how much of that is his fault?
Those
exactly.
Bugged me because they were so good.
They were really good.
Yeah.
And LeBron just said no.
They were. Right. Exactly.
And
it was like how he stopped the Raptors all those years.
Yeah.
Too. It was just hard to run through.
And so, like, I'm happy to see it happen. Big problems I have here is it's a small market. You got to pay Giannis now. I know I've told you guys about this a million times and how much I hate this contract.
I know where you're going.
Chris Middleton is not a 5-year, $178 million man. He never will be in my mind.
You're probably right, but he's having his best season.
Look, I agree.
It's actually convincing that he's a real number 2 star on a team, which is great.
I think he is a number 2, but
you want a fun stat about Chris Middleton this year? He is on pace to join the 40-50-90 club, which for those of you who don't know, that's 40% from 3, 50% from the field, and 90% from the line. And he's going to do it while averaging 6 threes a game. Who is the only other player to do that? Steph Curry. So he's putting up crazy numbers, not MVP numbers, because he really is only doing it. He's scoring 21 points a game, which obviously is not that same level. He only has 4 assists, 6 rebounds, which, don't get me wrong, great numbers. But he really is taking up a ton of cap to play second fiddle to Giannis and not necessarily give you that slightly higher tier reward.
Pippen is a polar opposite, whereas he got absolutely robbed out of a contract.
All that money.
But there's a balance here. And I think the Bucks needed to figure out, I think they needed to retain Middleton because I think Giannis, whether or not it's as vocal as someone, the way that it's perceived with LeBron, I think Giannis is running the show and you can tell what makes Giannis happy or unhappy. And I think that they needed to, it was something that they needed to just bite the bullet on to keep.
I mean, their team is really well built. They have an insane amount of guard depth, right? They have DiVincenzo, Hill, Bledsoe, and then their wings, they've, Sterling Brown, Chris Middleton. DiVincenzo can play a wing.
Also, just saying.
They have Marvin Williams now.
Ilyasova is shooting high 30% from 3.
Like Ilyasova's been good. Ilyasova is one of the most underrated players in the NBA, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I also think the interesting thing with this team is they're pretty well set to play in the playoffs because you do kind of slowly condense those rotations and you don't have to go as deep. Like they have 12, 13 guys who could get on the court at any given moment during the regular season. You don't really need it. And so you're going to have Giannis playing upwards of 40 minutes a game. You're not necessarily going to need all those bigs getting in all the time. So to me, it's going to be a little interesting to see how they do it this year. Especially considering what they ran into with the Raptors last year where they basically set up the wall against Giannis. But I think that,
I think
you don't necessarily need to run too many different lineups out there for them to be
successful. I think Giannis is too hardworking to allow himself to be stopped by the wall again.
Yeah.
So
that's how I feel too.
His 3-point percentage is
I don't
up.
see it.
I think he's one of those players who's going to find a way.
He's up in every statistical category except minutes per game.
Yeah, isn't it?
Which is insane.
I don't have the number here, but I know his PER is the best ever, right?
I don't know what it is exactly, but
he's putting up fantastic,
and he's playing less minutes. He was the MVP last year, playing like 34 minutes a game. And this year he's playing like 31 minutes a game, and he's having a better season, right? And what you're saying, that rotation condensed, I think that's just you take out Marvin Williams, you take out Robin Lopez, you plug in Giannis.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, Rolos, no. That's all right. We'll get Rolos a ring. Although I will, not to get back to the Western Conference, can't see him getting past the Lakers. I think LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to be able to guard this team. But that's beside
you put Giannis on LeBron and
East,
Lopez, who's been a pretty solid defender on AD.
He gets chewed.
They might be able to pull it off.
He gets chewed.
Maybe.
But anyways.
Maybe.
But I think the interesting thing for the Bucks too is getting over the hill and getting into the finals. So I think it's kind of important too to look at who they're going up against. I'm going to just kind of walk down the list here. Raptors are second in the East.
I'm
right
a
now.
huge Raptor.
What do we think here?
Oh my God. Yeah, no, take it, Mike.
Yeah, Michael, take
what
it.
A delight this has been watching them play this year. I'm smiling as I say it.
1,000% agree.
Oh my gosh.
Why do you say that? Like, what is your reasoning
combination
there?
of things? Not sure what the expectations were with Kawhi leaving. Not having an expectation, having this happen, is the best feel. It's crazy what it feels like. Being happy for advanced stat god Lowry, like it's just awesome to watch. Siakam now being in all of these memes where they're comparing him, like who would you rather have, Siakam or Paul George? The fact that he's even being spoken about in that conversation means that you have a star. Like you totally do.
I mean, he's averaging 23.6, 7.5,
kind of got
and
the
6.5.
Canadian Spurs. That's what I'd call this team.
I actually wrote that down.
Yeah,
I literally wrote that down.
We must be related.
It's crazy. So I'm a huge Nick Nurse guy.
Yeah.
I know. I'm gonna talk about Van Vliet here. You can talk about Van Vliet now if you want to, but I got a whole list of players that Nick Nurse made better.
Go for it.
Yeah,
so
all right. I'm interested to see what you say here because he's about to get some money.
Van Vliet before Nick Nurse was averaging 9 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 3 assists. This year he's averaging 17 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists a game. Lowry before Nurse was averaging 16, 6, and 7. Now he's averaging 19, 5, and 8. Norman Powell was 5, 2, and 1. Now he's 16, 4, and 2. Terrence Davis, do you guys even know who that is?
I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Rookie, came out of nowhere. He's averaging 8, 3.5, and 2 for a contending Raptors team. We talked about Siakam. Siakam's been absolutely crazy. Ibaka was averaging 12, 6, and 1 before Nurse, and now he's averaging 16, 8, and 1.
I think there's a few things you could look at there. Obviously, Nick Nurse is a fantastic coach. Don't get me wrong. I think it's also just the mix of players on this team because he didn't necessarily have this same. I know it's hard to say core because they're all kind of on expiring contracts. You look at some of these guys, like they weren't part of the DeRozan era of Raptors teams. Other than Lowry, realistically, or Norman Powell, even.
And I think that's
a lot of these guys came from other situations, and I think they just gelled.
I think Nick Nurse and obviously like their god tier GM Masai Ujiri. I think they've created like this culture there that is incredible, and that's why they're like the Spurs. Right, like the only future I see for this team, as long as they have Ujiri and Nurse, is up. They're going to be a contender. It doesn't they've proven it doesn't matter who they have on this roster, and they're going to make them into quality role players or something more.
Right,
and like that's been proven now.
And I think the team that we're seeing this year changes. I think you've got an aging Lowry. Marcus All clearly isn't going to be there. Serge Ibaka is getting old.
100%.
So the Raptors are going to fall a little bit, most likely. But here's my thing: the Raptors, kind of keeping that Spurs comparison, was Nick Nurse a Spur assistant? I think he was.
I don't think so.
Oh God, he coached.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Coached
he was in the G League for a long time.
He was in the G League for a while.
Yeah, but I guess that doesn't really matter to what I was going to say. But kind of a comparison to the Spurs, it seems like the kind of place and the kind of culture that if they draft a Duncan type or they draft a Kawhi,
easily stay there the whole time.
It becomes a career guy. So I think like their future is bright in that sense, even if.
And you also they're going to retain Van Vliet. They're going to retain Siakam. It's just like who you bringing around those guys.
Right.
So
right. Agreed.
So huge on it.
I just don't see them being a threat to make the finals this year. I don't know how you feel about that, but I just think that they have been a pleasant surprise. You could make the case for Siakam to win a second most improved player award this year. Yeah, that's true. I mean,
you could make the case.
Are we already going to the Heat? Because that's another team that. Well, whatever.
I want to talk about them as well.
or
I
Celtics.
think that makes sense. Let's talk. Let's talk about the Heat then. If you want to jump from one most improved to another, what are your thoughts?
Go
on
ahead,
the Heat?
Mike.
Kind of a delight again. I've enjoyed having no expectations for this, and every night having my expectations exceeded. I think that's what's happening with especially the Heat. But I mean, the Raptors, there was kind of like a precedent now set that they have the culture. The Heat, I really like Hero, however you pronounce it, Bam, and to be honest, Jimmy found where Jimmy needed to be.
100%.
I think all of that is really working for them, and they're scheming. They're going to bring in something else. But that's a whole other discussion.
I mean, yeah, obviously, I think Pat Riley is some sort of wizard, but at the same time, like they haven't. Like the only move they made this year is one that I truly don't understand. In trading for Iguodala and getting rid of Justice Winslow, I think the biggest haul for them in this trade is bringing in Jay Crowder. I don't necessarily think that they've made the right moves, and I think they're stuck in a limbo.
I think they're trying to add defenders.
Iguodala was a win.
I could see this team to kind of look at
Iguodala was a win this season thing, but that's all I'm going to say.
I look at this team and I think they're just a slightly different version of the Bulls that Jimmy Butler was on. I think this scenario isn't exponentially better for him. I think he has some young shooters around him, some tough guys down low, but they don't have the X factor. They don't have the guy to get them over the hump. And Jimmy Butler, it's kind of shown that him alone is not enough.
I wrote that down in my notes. So like underneath their failures, I said I think this team needs another piece or two. I would have liked to see them trade Dragic for Drew Holiday.
Yeah,
I think that would have been an excellent trade.
Totally.
I think acquiring Drew Holiday, put him next to Jimmy Butler, you have another great two-way player. I think Drew Holiday is underrated, and I think he's had a bad season this season, but I know he can be better than what he's shown this year. And I watch those Pelican games sometimes, and I truly believe Drew Holiday can guard 1 through 3. He'll give you 15 points and 5 assists. And that's what you need from your point guard.
Definitely.
I think
that's why I think them going for a Drew. There were rumors about a Chris Paul.
Yeah.
I think maybe Kyle Lowry would be a good fit there too. You just need a traditional point guard on that team. They don't really have
one. Not to belabor, because unless anyone has anything else to say, and this was my fault. I moved us there. No, it was Luke's fault. He mentioned Bam. But But I would say the takeaway here is that the Heat are just well run, and they're just never going to go away. They're like a bad infection. They're just always kind of around.
I think they're always going to be a playoff team, but they're more likely to fall on the bottom four rather than the top four. The Raptors I see are going to be around for a long time, but I see the Raptors being a top four team and not a bottom four team.
But think about the implications there. Giannis gets dinged up in a 6-game series against the Heat, and then has to go into the next round. It's just things like
it's just going to be a tough place to go.
Things like that.
Right. And they're just an annoying team to have to go play.
It's an attractive free agent market too. Like, why wouldn't you want to go play in Miami?
Those Vice jerseys too, and that's where
those Vice jerseys are insane. They're so nice.
No, they're doing a good job, and I think another team in something of a kind of a transition, comparable to the Raptors and even in the Heat, and trying to find their identity after some changes. Obviously, the Heat bringing in Butler, the Raptors losing Kawhi Leonard, are the Celtics. We all know that in the post Kyrie Irving era, they're looking pretty good. And Luke, you said
can I go off on this? I have a lot of notes on this.
Okay. See, are you anti-Celtic?
I'm anti-Kyrie. I said, thank God he is gone. Kyrie is a poisonous player. He seems to be creating problems everywhere he goes. He brings the circus with him, and the Celtics said no more. Huge on this team moving forward. I think they have two really great forwards, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. If they continue to develop, Tatum can play 2 through 4. So can Brown. Brown's 6'7". He plays defense. He shoots threes. His dribbling, Jaylen Brown has always been a terrible ball handler, but he's made really big improvements on that this year. He started to take people off the dribble. He's starting to shoot a lot more mid-range, things like that. And the only problem I really have with this team is the fact that they have so much money tied up in guys like Kemba Walker, who I don't think they really needed, and Gordon Hayward, which was just unfortunate with that injury. I'll go back to my spawn ball Rockets and being you need a formidable big to play playoff basketball. And the Celtics team does not have one right now. Daniel Theis and Enes Kanter, or is Enes Kanter even on the Celtics team? They're not getting you through it.
Oh God, Cantor has always been an interesting case to me because he is by some metrics a good center. He can get some pretty good offensive rebounds and he'll put up, a good amount of points every night. The problem is he does not play defense
at all.
And if you're really in this era of what centers need to be,
defense first.
You're gonna have to get rebounds and you're gonna have to play defense. And he does not play defense. He is horrible.
But
and as good as I like Tice, don't get me wrong, he just isn't. He doesn't really have that physical
he's a
presence.
backup.
But but people were starting to ride the Tice train. Towards the
I am.
He's a great floor spacer.
He's a pretty good stretch five. Yeah, and realistically too with him, like you can have him run. Like I think a combination of him and Marcus Smart is really the combo that the Rockets wish.
Marcus Smart is a great sixth man. He's just a hard-nosed defender. He makes a big difference on that team. And again, just like Jaylen Brown, he's had some issues offensively, but this year he's shown me that he can fix those.
So what do you guys? I mean, I'm mostly eye test on the Celtics again. I mean, I really didn't like giving them credit. I've never just been like a Celtics, not even bad feelings about them, just no feelings really. But Tatum is clearly erupting as the future.
He's going to be an all-star. Yeah. His ceiling is Kobe Bryant.
I have Kobe upside just in the way that he is. There's just something about him and the way that he takes over.
He's quiet and he gets these buckets.
And he takes over. There is no debate on who's taking the shot.
You should look back at his February stats are incredible. He was averaging like 34, 7, and 4 or something like that. I don't remember what it was exactly, but
was that Clippers overtime game during that stretch? Because that was insane. The buzzer beater he hit.
I don't remember.
He's
a true number one player
too. I think that was part of the reason the Celtics blew up was, obviously Kyrie has his issues and that we could really dive into and, it's a whole other thing. But there wasn't necessarily a sense of who is performing what role.
And now it's very
this Celtics
clear.
Team, it's pretty obvious who is supposed to do what.
Tatum, Kemba, Brown.
And obviously you can, and you can kind of let players here and there pick up the pieces.
Matthew mentioned
you can let Hayward go for 25 on a given night, but it's on a given night.
In the East,
generally, the roles are set.
My opinion, just looking at how the season was progressing for this team, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba were all averaging over 20 points per game. And
it wasn't not their year this year, and that's just because they don't have a big. Secret. They're not going to be able to stop Giannis.
Right.
Hayward was averaging 17 a game. Like, you have 4 people averaging...
He's a fringe all-star. He used to be an all-NBA talent, and I think a lot of people don't recognize that.
Brown could be a potential, and Hayward is or was or kind of is. So you have like a... I'm telling you, the Celtics are clearly...
In the coming years, Jaylen Brown will 100% be an all-star.
In the East, I think the Celtics are clearly the second best team in the East. Yeah. Agreed.
I think... It's Bucks, Celtics, Raptors. Those are my top 3 moving forward. The next 4 years, it'll be Bucks, Celtics, Raptors, and that's the order.
So I have a good counter here because while we're saying that, one team that I think everyone thought was almost a favorite in the East going into the year, Philadelphia 76ers. We're going to get into them. What do we think about what's going on in Philly right now? Because they were supposed to be this great team. They brought in Al Horford, brought Tobias Harris back, Josh Richardson in the Jimmy Butler trade, and everyone kind of thought they were just going to have all this size and firepower, but it's evidently not working as they fall into 6th in the East. What do you guys think?
Mike,
go for it.
All right. Well, the Horford signing has been bad, but I don't think it was bad when they actually signed it. I think he fills a very unique role for them, and I think he's a great fit on that team. My problem right now is coaching and culture.
No.
So I don't think Brett Brown, I don't think has any control in that locker room. And I think Embiid and Simmons, even though they won't come out and openly say it, I think they're beefing a little bit. And that's because they're both first options on their own team. Ben Simmons is insane, and Embiid is insane. So someone has to get in there, and either they have to trade one, or the coach has to be like, Embiid's our guy, or Simmons is our guy, and the other one has to change for the better. And Embiid has said this. He's been like, if we want to win, one of us has to change. Then one of them does have to change.
Totally agree with that. And I think realistically, looking at them struggling stems from those two, because I don't think they fit. I personally think you got to trade one of them. I don't know which one. That's a whole other discussion on how you would, kind of similar to what I was saying about Portland. You got to start quasi blowing it up. But I think it trickles down because neither of them are great shooters and they clog the lane. Their offense has no flow. It's realistically just one of them pounding it inside, and then they don't have shooters around them. Because you look at, they have Horford and Harris on their books, but they're not putting up much, and they're taking up almost $60 million of the cap in a given year, and they're only averaging combined 30 points. And they're each pulling down, 6 or 7 rebounds each, and then 3 or 4
They got
assists.
a couple guys at the deadline. They got Glenn Robinson, and they got another guy, Alec Burks, both from Golden State.
Right. And you would think that they would have, obviously, we didn't have enough time to really get into seeing what they look like. But I think you look at some of these guys, they don't have any shooting outside of
Korkmaz.
Realistically, outside of Shake Milton and Trey Burke.
Furkan Korkmaz is a catch and shoot. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
I'm looking him up right now.
He is. No, he's averaging 39.7 from three. So I'll loop him in. He's essentially 40% from three. But you're really going to play Korkmaz big minutes? He's a great spot
He's a rotation
shooter,
guy.
The problem is, exactly, you can't have him on the court all the time to counteract how bad the fit of Simmons and Embiid really is. Especially when Harris and Horford aren't shooting well from three right now. Neither, I guess, Harris is shooting 36%, and then Horford is shooting 33%. Harris is okay, but it's still not enough. You don't have enough to counteract the fact that you're clogging the lane.
Delve into
and that's why they're not working.
The Simmons and Embiid, and I also think it's just interesting to think about the other teams that they're supposed to be on, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. I just find it so fascinating. I think they'll wind up looking back at it and being like, oof. It's just interesting, the timing and how it works out for some players and it doesn't for others, getting those massive contracts. And I think Tobias Harris has just got a complete steal with his contract, and I think that's going to be tough for them.
Hats off to Tobias Harris. Man deserves to get paid. He's been bounced around the league. He's been good too. He's a fringe all-star. Again, it's like that Chris Middleton contract. Who in their right mind gives a fringe all-star 5-year max? Koff, Minnesota, Andrew Wiggins, and Towns. But
the point I'm not making
it's like
that he doesn't. It's a good thing that he got it for himself as a person, and like as a, everyone should try to get as much as they can.
Right. On the team level, it doesn't work.
It cripples the team. It absolutely cripples what some of these teams can do to build around. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I think that's a good point. We don't necessarily know the fallout of COVID-19, but teams are going to be tight on cap, and having that on their books right now, a lot of money to Tobias Harris and Al Horford is going to really hurt the Sixers.
In my opinion, you trade Simmons.
And that's more of a long run issue, but I think it depends on the haul you get. I think it really depends on what you get for either him or Embiid, but I think you got to get rid of one of them.
You don't. And
I don't.
Let's look.
I don't think they're a finals.
Orlando Magic. Learn these lessons we learned from history. The Orlando Magic traded their all NBA big man Shaquille O'Neal, and he went on to go win 4 championships. You do not trade your all NBA center. You do not trade Embiid.
No,
Embiid will stay on your team.
I mean. Yeah, I personally think that Simmons is the one who's got to go. And my biggest critique with him is that it's not even that he can't shoot threes, it's that he won't. He averages, I think, 0.1 attempts per game shooter. Or something crazy like that. Ben Simmons?
Simmons isn't. Embiid is.
No, that's who I'm talking about, Ben Simmons. He will not shoot the three. It's not even like, for me at least, looking at the way this team is constructed, help space the floor. Take one corner three a game. Literally just make them respect you even slightly. Just open it up a little bit, and he refuses. He will not shoot.
I mean,
and he is a problem. Unless he starts shooting, what are you doing with him on your roster,
Matthew? When we watched
on this roster,
the Sixers play the Knicks at the Garden, and Embiid was hurt, and it was just Ben Simmons leading the charge for the Sixers.
Yeah,
it was awesome. I mean, he was.
It's insane.
Dunking the ball like crazy.
He's incredible.
These fast break dunks. And then the other thing that was awesome was his defense. Like, he's a game changer.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like, it can't be just a willy-nilly like Embiid
everyone.
Wins this war of who's going to get traded. Like, losing Ben Simmons is horrific for a team, and whoever gets him, if it gets to that point.
Which is why they haven't traded him.
Right. And I think the other thing to look at, too, is it's not so clear-cut. Both of them are pretty injury-prone. Picking which one to get rid of is scary because you're going to end up keeping the one who gets hurt long term. I feel like it's one of those things. It's like a Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. Right. I don't know. I don't know what you do, but it's not working this year. And obviously they've fallen to 6th in the East. I don't see them competing with any of the ones
It's
at
a
the
lot
top.
like the Celtics last year. They just have too much talent on this roster. I think it was wrong of them to. I think Al Horford signing was with good intentions, and I think it was a good signing. But we see now, like, you didn't need another big, right? Simmons plays point guard, but he's guarding a forward. Harris has to guard another forward.
Right.
He's not going to guard a guard or a big. He's not strong enough to guard a big. You're not going to put Embiid on someone else. So why are you signing Horford? And they gave him this huge contract,
Exactly.
right? Like, so it really just comes down to bad management, poor coaching. What does their situation look like if we take Nick Nurse and Masai Ujiri and we throw them on the Sixers staff? What does their situation look like?
Yeah.
You don't really know. And I think that it just comes back down to the management of this team has been poor, and they need to do something about it. And it unfortunately will have to come at the cost of them trading one of their player assets, whether that be Simmons, Embiid, Horford, Harris, whoever it is, right? I'm sure Elton Brand will figure it out, but it really sucks that they've tied, they tied themselves up here. There's nothing they can do, right?
Totally. But it's more a race to see who's going to put together the next Eastern title contender that's, sustained long term. And the Sixers have a lot of questions. We mentioned the Heat in finding a guard, the Celtics in finding a center, the Raptors in kind of transforming around Pascal Siakam. What are all these teams going to do long term? And so, obviously we're looking at it in two ways. We're looking at it, where the NBA left off, and if it does pick up the season, where does it go? And what happens next? I really don't know what this is.
Can I read my final thoughts on this situation, then we can move on?
Go for it.
I wrote one sentence is my final thought. I said, Sam Hinkie is a god-tier GM, and they should have never fired him.
Yeah, I mean, Hinkie died for their sins. I wanted, and we'll see what happens with Leon Rose in New York, but I was all in on going and getting Hinkie back in New York and just absolutely trusting the process.
I think Hinkie's a genius, and that's just me. So
yeah, I mean, they won't admit it. He got forced out.
Yeah.
The NBA doesn't want anyone blatantly tanking, and they changed the lottery odds, whatever. But yeah, I agree.
So
trust the process. If you're bad, it's the only way to do it.
It's interesting. And
closing thoughts.
I've started to realize that no matter how much the Knicks tanked, you wind up only getting the third pick because the Pelicans get the number one pick, and it's one of these things. No, it's not where. Yeah, but. Even Jordan.
Don't even
Jordan
get me started on how that
when
unfolded.
He was drafted the Bulls and they were trying to not make the playoffs potentially, and he's like, that doesn't sound like a winning culture. I'm starting to get more on board with the idea of having a winning culture and building that way and having that perception.
You 100% have to do that. You have to go out there and win games, but you put your bad players out there to try and win games.
I didn't realize
you develop these guys by building character and
I'm doing a podcast with
you need Kevin Knox getting big minutes is what you need if you're the Knicks right now.
I think the best way to transition to these last three storylines, really two. MVP race. I say we just round table boom names and then see what happens.
All right. So I want some. I like that. Let's do it quick. We'll just do some rapid fire.
I wrote down a lot for this.
Give me a hot take. Who should have won, and who you think will actually win.
All right, Mike, go ahead.
And when I say should have won, I mean who do you want to win? Who you think should win but isn't going?
Who should have? Who do you want, and then who should win? Okay, got this. Ready?
And a hot take.
Oh, it has to be
a hot take.
You want one of my hot takes? You can go to I have 2 hot takes, 3 hot takes.
Go for it.
Written in my notes.
Go for it.
My MVP hot takes. I got my boy first up, Pascal Siakam, last year's most improved player, playing like a man on a mission. There's nothing flashy or special about his game. Let's look at the metrics, right? So I wrote down all of his metrics, and basically I'm just trying to prove that they're second in the East. He's the obvious best player on this team. All his stats are up. He's ranking top 20 in a lot of important categories, and that's that. My next hot take, Luka Doncic. All right, Luka Magic, baby. This is my boy right here.
Fair.
His leaderboards, he's top 20 in 25 stats. Field goals made, attempted, 3 points made, attempted, missed field goals, free throws made, free throws attempted, defensive rebounds, total rebounds, assists, turnovers, points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, PER, defensive rebounding percentage, assist percentage, usage, offensive win shares for 48, box plus minus, offensive box plus minus, and value over replacement. And he's at top 10 in a lot of those categories as well. And they're the sixth. They're sixth in the West.
With a giant snake at power forward too.
Sorry that Porzingis left you guys, but they are sixth in the West, so he's not like absolutely carrying this team. ESPN experts predicted this team to win 41 wins and finish ninth in the West. They didn't play a full season, but the Mavericks are 40-27 right now as of when the season got postponed. My last hot take was Chris Paul. CP3's had a reemergence in OKC.
Wow.
He said, I'm not going to curse on here, but he said, I don't mess with Harden. I don't mess with Blake Griffin. And anybody taller than me can get lost. All right. Dude's got a small man's complex. He's been playing like crazy. He's motivated this team. Who would have thought this Thunder team would have actually been decent? And I mean,
no one.
And his impact goes beyond his numbers on the court. I mean, they got a young star in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I think Chris Paul's a great mentor for. And he's inspired this winning culture, right? We just talked about this winning culture. Chris Paul has brought it to OKC. Who I think would have won was Giannis. We all know it was going to be Giannis. Who should have won? LeBron. If you answer differently, you're not a real NBA fan. LeBron is the league MVP every year. So every year. If he's in the league, he's the MVP. He's the GOAT.
All right. I like that. So, all right, I'm gonna take that then. Obviously, I agree with you. I think LeBron should win. I think Giannis would have won, although, there's plenty of uncertainty with how, the last 20 or so games would have gone. Because LeBron was on a second half tear that, was honestly superior to what Giannis was doing. But Giannis consistently for the whole year is doing something crazy. The Bucks had the best record in the league. It makes sense. He would probably be back-to-back MVP. My hot take is Anthony Davis, because he's honestly putting up just as good numbers as LeBron, if not better in some categories. He's not getting the same amount of credit. And I know players in the past have kind of complained about that, Kyrie Irving. But he isn't, he's just kind of in LeBron's shadow a little bit because it is LeBron's team for now. But he's my hot take for who could have won the MVP.
I wish I had a hot take.
Michael,
really
what do you got?
But I was going to say that I want LeBron to win. Like I would have wanted LeBron to win MVP, and I think he was starting to get right as quarantine happened. I think he was starting to really get into the conversation with some of the performances he had. I just think it was going to be a runaway Giannis. I mean, with the best player efficiency rating, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, and I should have Googled it, and I don't have it. But Giannis is doing something that's pretty unprecedented, and
special.
I think there's a chance LeBron might have. I think there's some narrative around LeBron.
And the voters love storylines. So.
But I still think Giannis. Yeah, and I don't have a hot take.
That's all right.
All right. Well, then that's fine. We can transition a little bit.
Rookie of the year.
Another one of these. Same thing. Let's rattle it off. Rookie of the year.
I'll go first again.
If the season ended now, what do you think?
All right. So I put another 3 hot takes down here. You guys are gonna love my first hot take right here. RJ Barrett.
Nice.
RJ Barrett has been very, very good. No one really recognizes that because the Knicks are so garbage and nobody really cares about them. But
exactly,
he's averaging 14, 4.5, and 2. He's playing a weird wing shooting guard, small forward role. But I definitely think he's a better fit as shooting guard because I think he's got a score first mentality, especially with the ball in his hand. And he gets down. He gets downhill. He posts up. He gets tough buckets inside. And he's 6'6", 205. So he's big. His floor to me is Karis LeVert, and his ceiling is Dwayne Wade. So,
wow.
He's a definite starter, maybe even with all NBA potential.
That's high praises.
Thank you.
I like him. My next hot take is Rui Hachimura, just because I love Rui. We play
nice. Yeah, no, I think he'll make it. He'll definitely make it all rookie.
Yeah, second team maybe. He's not that great. He's playing on a really bad Wizards team, so he's putting up a lot of empty minutes. But I just love him. I just wanted the hot take time, right? So. My last hot take, which is going to give away who I think is going to win, Zion Williamson. This really hurts me to say because I'm 110% a Zion hater. But he's the obvious. It's going to hurt me to say this again. He's the obvious best player in this draft class, averaging 23, 7, and 2. It's impressive, especially for a rookie, right? I expected Zion to be really bad on offense and really great on defense, and it's been the other way. He's posting a 113 defensive rating, which is pretty shit. and a
Yep.
negative 1.1 defensive box plus minus. So, I mean, not great. Not
Yeah,
great.
I think that feeds into obviously your choice
Who
for
would
rookie
have
of the
won?
year is
Ja Morant. The
right.
dude has been incredible.
I think that's
incredible. And we talked about winning culture. He's bringing it to this Grizzlies team, right?
Yeah,
He is totally.
I mean,
he is.
And I have actually the same things down, other than my hot take, which I'll hold off on for right now. But I agree. Ja took this team that was not good, and he's brought them to the 8th seed. And I'll put a little asterisk next to that. Maybe that didn't necessarily stand. Realistically, he was the reason that happened. And putting up 18 points, 7 assists ish, 4 rebounds.
he's been great.
Shooting well from 3, has a steal a game. He's playing fantastic. And that's no slight at Zion.
He's just played the whole season. That's the only reason why.
Zion's played in 19 games. We can't give him rookie of the year. It literally cannot happen.
Yeah.
First team, absolutely fine. You weren't a very impactful rookie when you were playing, no doubt in my mind. But you're not the rookie of the year
Because you didn't play the whole
you
game.
didn't play the year. Yeah.
Whole year.
You kind of spoiled my hot take, but I also had RJ Barrett, and realistically, the only counterpoints I have to what you said, he is top 5 in every statistical category for rookies. And then on top of that, he's playing on a pretty horrible team with no spacing.
For a guy who can't shoot either, so.
Exactly. And his game is really reliant on his physicality and driving into the lane. And he has pretty bad spacing. I won't name people. Julius Randle. Taking up.
Don't say his name.
Yeah, it's horrible. And so he's doing all this without any help. And I know that it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's one thing to be said about if you are on a good team with good help, or I'm saying help, better players. Like if you look at Zion, like he has Brandon Ingram, who was an all-star. You have better players. Takes some load off of you.
Lonzo. Let's not talk about it.
Yeah, fine. No, but exactly. Better players around him. Like you have Jaren Jackson around Ja, and you have all these guys who are better suited around them. These teams are constructed better. Barrett really wasn't. And I think other names who absolutely should be on this list are both Heat rookies in Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn. But exactly, I don't think they're rookie of the year. I think they would make an all team. Taco Fall, I will not let him go without being mentioned. That man absolutely should be rookie of the year. That's my hot take. Michael, what do you got?
This discussion is just Ja, I think. And I think that the interesting thing about Ja that I kind of like, it's a little scary too because it's a little bit of Russ. If we're just getting like another Russ career, which is what am I saying? I sound like a spoiled basketball fan. Like it's been amazing, but he's
cooler than Russ
on Twitter, which is hilarious. It's
more of an Iverson,
all or like trying to murder by dunk everybody.
That Aaron Baines dunk.
There have been some pretty frightening ones. And I really do think. I mean, he'll be the rookie of the year, which is fine. Zion is frightening, like actually frightening. And I mostly when I think about the rookie of the year stuff, I just get really excited about the future of the NBA. I've been nervous about LeBron retiring and what's next, and it's in really good hands with obviously you've got Giannis, Anthony Davis as like the older of this realm, but then you have Tatum, Brown, Luka, Trey, and now these new guys.
I mean, we're good with Luka, Trey, Zion,
like
Ja.
The league has like actual bona fide faces to it, and I think that's awesome. It's just Ja, and my hot take, which is a bright spot, is just Tyler Hero. Forgot about Kendrick Nunn, but him too.
Kendrick Nunn was good at the beginning of the season.
I
he
all
been
the
great
points
since.
on Barrett, and let's hope. Exactly. Just fingers crossed that things get better.
I mean, he's going to be first team. He's 100% going to be first team. So
I don't know. He might get left off because they were just god awful, and he wasn't very.
No, he's in a big market. He gets a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I mean he was terrible from the free throw line. That is my biggest issue with him. I will say this is kind of a good transition. Looking at, and this is kind of the last point I'll touch on. Just kind of one other issue I wanted to talk about. Just as the NBA paused was where the bottom of the NBA looked, because obviously Rookie of the Year is so pertinent to some of these bad teams. It's a pretty weak draft. It's interesting the way it's set up with Golden State pretty low, Minnesota, who just traded for D'Angelo Russell to pair with Karl Anthony Towns in the third spot. What do you guys think about some of these bottom teams? It does not have to be long. It can just be a quick sentiment. What are your guys' thoughts?
I forget where it was from. That this draft isn't weak. It's got talented players, just none of them are stars. So you're gonna get like serious pieces. Like there's just pieces in this draft. And I don't have enough data
I agree with that.
I don't really know. I'm not very familiar with all the draft, but I read a piece on that you've got different players that can really impact a team, whether they're not going to be the star, but something. So I think that'll be interesting. Am I pissed that the Warriors got like a tank year and they're going to be amazing again? Yeah, but I'll keep my emotions on the sideline.
All right, Luke, what do you think?
Well, I read Golden State's already said they're going to draft Wiseman. So as long as if they get the first overall pick, Wiseman's going first, which I'm fine with. I think Wiseman's the best player in the draft. I think he's going to be a star. I see 2 stars in this draft, and everybody else is kind of like iffy. They could be really good, they could be average, or they could be nothing. But Wiseman and LaMelo Ball, it pains me to like LaMelo Ball. But the only thing I've seen from this kid is his ability to run a pick and roll. He's got good court vision, and he throws up floaters from 18 feet away, which is incredible. So
I really do.
Yep.
I mean, the Knicks are sitting at 6 right now. So
yeah, that win against the Hawks right before the NBA pause could hurt them. But hey, you never know.
Yeah.
A little big baller brand in the Garden would be pretty nice.
And but a lot of my thoughts on this year's draft have been outside of like who's going to get picked, because I think outside of Wiseman and LaMelo, I think a lot of people are just going to kind of get like a good role player. I think Anthony Edwards has like Victor Oladipo potential, but Victor Oladipo had one and a half good years. So 1.5 great years.
I think it's just going to be interesting for me. The thing that I look at, and maybe it is because I'm looking at it through a lens of the Knicks, but it's a very point guard dominant draft.
100%
draft, and I don't think there's any clear answer on who's going to pop. I like Halliburton from
he's 3-and-D. He's going to be like a Pat Bev maybe.
Right, but he can shoot the lights out, and so that's one of those things where you don't know, and you don't know who improves from that. That's what we think he's going to be, and there's a reason Giannis went 15th. Like I think at first glance, it probably didn't make sense that he was going to be this absolute almighty
it never is that clear.
monster in the NBA. But that's why I think it's going to be interesting to see, because there's no way at least one of these guards does not end up.
And I think
and someone is going to strike gold with one of them, and it's not going to, in my opinion, it's not going to be the first one to take.
My notes on this draft have been about scouting. You can't fly to Israel to go scout Denny Avita. Like you can't do that anymore because of COVID. You can't go to Germany to scout that French guy who's playing in Germany now. I don't remember. He's Killian Hayes. He's a top 3 point guard in this year's draft class. He's like 6'5". He shot the ball well. Right. He's shown that he can make out of the pick and roll. So like, what does that mean for international prospects? Is someone just going to like take there's always some type of international prospect who's an unknown to teams. Porzingis, Nila Nikita. It just so happens to be I'm naming Knicks, but there's always that guy who's like he could be really good. Dragan Bender was one of those guys. Mm-hmm. What happens when all the international players are like that? No one really got a good look at these kids, right? And then
no, and I think that's actually a good point. There are so many question marks about what happens to the league following coronavirus and COVID-19. There's so many variables, and one of them is
scouting.
For a lot of these teams, how do we
assess these players?
Properly draft this year and going forward?
And then the U.S. prospects, there was no tournament, so like you see crazy risers like Donovan Mitchell. Right. Donovan Mitchell was a 2nd-round pick until he started working out, interviewing, and had a good March Madness for Louisville, and then he got selected 13th overall. Exactly. Carson Edwards was going undrafted until he went off for 40 points a game for 3 games in a row in March Madness. What does this mean for U.S. prospects as well? How do these teams really assess these guys? And I think it's a good year. The fact that you're going to get someone solid no matter what, as long as you're picking like top 15, you're going to be okay. I think it's a good year to have that. But in like a draft like last year, where there's so like, how do you properly assess a Zion if you can't go interview him or something like that, right? Like you can't.
Right.
So
no, I do. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the NBA handles it. And I actually think that's a good
kind of wrap it up.
I was going to say a good
in episode
good
2,
way to
installment 2 of kind of the maiden voyage of the podcast that we're going to kind of talk about life after COVID NBA version.
Yeah. So I think realistically, if you enjoyed what you heard on our first podcast here, some of our thoughts on the league, the next step for us is taking a look at how COVID-19 has impacted the NBA, getting a deeper look into that. And then specifically in looking at what happens next for a lot of these organizations. take a look at the NBA and what that means, potentially for some of their cap, this, that, the other thing, and just get a look at what's next for the NBA as a result of this virus facing everyone in the world. So with that, for all of us here at the Hoop Troop podcast,
all three of us,
thank you for listening. Yeah, all three of us. Yeah, and my mom who's listening. Thank you for joining in. I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and please join us next time when we talk about that. And definitely do your best to stay safe, social distance, the whole nine.
Thanks, Matthew.
Definitely want to keep all you around.
Yes.